Welcome to class, everyone. Grab your notebooks, get comfortable, and let's get right into today's explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to be your guide for this masterclass. Today, we're setting the stakes for your upcoming exam by taking a high-speed journey from the very first, frankly, pretty crude stone tools, all the way to the ancient world's greatest urban miracle, the Indus Valley Civilization. We've got a lot of ground to cover, and my goal is to make sure you walk into that test completely confident and ready to ace it. So let's dive in. Here's the roadmap for today's review session. We'll start with the Stone Ages, cross the Metal Bridge, witness the rise of the Indus Valley, analyze their brilliant town planning, and finally, look at their society and decline.
Before we hit the timeline, let's nail down some terminology that's absolutely going to be on your test. You need to know the difference between prehistory, protohistory, and history. Prehistory, that means zero written records. We rely entirely on archaeological evidence, pots and stones. History is when we have texts that we can actually read. But protohistory, that is the fascinating middle ground. It perfectly describes our main subject today, the Indus Valley Civilization. They had a really complex script, but get this, to this day, modern historians still haven't been able to decipher it.
Section 1. The Stone Ages. The Lithic Eras. Now, we all love talking about grand empires and cities, but this early Stone Age period, it literally covers 99% of human history. We chunk it out into 3 phases based on the tools our ancestors used and the climate they had to survive in. First is the Paleolithic, the Old Stone Age, starting way back around 300,000 BC. Then comes the Mesolithic, the Middle Stone Age, kicking in around 10,000 BC as the massive ice age finally thaws. And finally, the Neolithic, the New Stone Age, beginning around 6,000 BC. Think of this chronological flow as your mental map for the exam. Okay, definitely highlight the name Robert Bruce Foote in your notes. This is classic exam trivia. Back in 1863, this geologist discovered the Pallavaram hand axe in Tamil Nadu. That single monumental discovery essentially birthed the entire study of prehistory in India, and it earned him the title Father of Prehistoric Archaeology. So, transitioning from the freezing Paleolithic to the warmer Mesolithic era, human behavior had to change. The climate warmed up, grasslands expanded everywhere, and suddenly you have a proliferation of much smaller, much faster animals. To hunt them, humans couldn't exactly rely on heavy, clunky hand axes anymore. The crucial takeaway here is adaptation. They invented microliths. These were miniature, finely crafted stone blades, sometimes just an inch long, that could be attached to wood or bone to make arrows and spears. It was a massive leap in technology. Which brings us to arguably the biggest game changer in human history. Back in the Paleolithic, humans were just nomadic hunter-gatherers, basically at the absolute mercy of nature, hacking away with rough stones. But in the Neolithic, humanity becomes a food producer. We see the birth of agriculture, we see settled villages, and we see highly polished, refined stone tools. You absolutely need to grasp this evolutionary leap for the exam. It's quite literally the foundation of modern civilization. Because this shift was so monumental, tests are notoriously fond of asking about Neolithic firsts. So here's a rapid-fire cheat sheet for you. Animal domestication begins, and the wild dog is the very first. Evidence traces back to sites like Adamgar. We get the earliest evidence of cotton over in Mehrgarh, in present-day Pakistan. We see the earliest evidence of cultivated rice at Koldiwa and Mahagara in Uttar Pradesh. And crucially, because they needed a way to store all this newly farmed food, humanity invents the potter's wheel.
Moving on to Section 2, the Metal Bridge, the Chalcolithic Age.
Right, so we've got settled villages and farming. But to build actual cities, we need a stronger foundation. We need metal. Welcome to the Chalcolithic Age. Chalco means copper and lithic means stone. This phase marks the very first time humans figured out how to extract and use metal, specifically copper, right alongside their stone tools. Keep in mind, we're still talking about largely rural, village-based societies here, mostly famous for their distinct black and red painted pottery. But getting a handle on basic metallurgy, that was the stepping stone required for the next great leap. Which brings us to Section 3, Rise of the Indus Valley. The urban miracle. Put a giant star next to this in your notes, class, because this is the absolute centerpiece of our syllabus. The discovery of this civilization completely turned history on its head. For a very long time, colonial historians pushed this myth that ancient India was somewhat backward or uncivilized until outsiders showed up. But then Daro excavated Harappa in 1921, and R.D. Banerjee excavated Mohenjo Daro in 1922.
Those discoveries shattered those colonial myths literally overnight. They proved that while much of the world was still living in relative barbarism, the Indian subcontinent had a booming, hyper-advanced urban society stretching all the way back to 2500 BCE. And the scale of it, 2,000 plus, that is not an exaggeration. Over 2,000 Indus Valley sites have been discovered so far. It spanned all across present-day India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. We aren't just talking about a couple of dusty towns. We are talking about a massive network of trade and urbanism. It even includes colossal sites like Rocky Karhi in Haryana, which sprawls across a staggering 350 hectares. Next up, Section 4, Brilliant Town Planning, IVC Blueprints. What exactly makes these cities so special? And why are historians so incredibly obsessed with them? I want you to imagine pulling off this level of urban planning over 4,000 years ago. It's wild. Their streets intersected at precise right angles, forming a perfect grid, honestly, much like modern planned cities such as Chandigarh. They had covered underground drainage systems running directly under the streets, and get this, they came complete with easily cleanable sediment traps so they wouldn't clog. Every single house was built using standardized kiln-burnt bricks of the exact identical ratio. Architecturally, we also see distinct social stratification. There's a fortified citadel in the west, built up on a raised platform, likely for the elite or administrators, and then there's a much larger lower town in the east for the common citizens. The Great Bath of Mohenjo Daro is the perfect illustration of their engineering genius. We're talking about a massive brick structure ingeniously waterproofed with bitumen, which is a natural tar. It was likely used for some kind of ritualistic bathing. But here's a crucial detail for your test. Focus on what is missing. Despite all these massive public works and giant grain storehouses, archaeologists have found zero conclusive evidence of grand temples or massive palaces. This really suggests a highly organized, centralized authority that might have actually been run by merchants or a secular class, rather than some powerful priesthood. All right, Section 5, Society and Decline, Trade, Seals, and a Vanishing Act. So we've seen their unbelievable cities, but how did these people actually make a living? The Harappans were master traders. They ran a massive mercantile economy, conducting sea trade all the way with Mesopotamia through their artificial dockyard at the port of Lothal in Gujarat. To keep everything organized, they used a strictly standardized system of weights and measures based entirely on multiples of 16. We've also dug up thousands of beautifully carved steatite seals used to authenticate goods. These feature some really mysterious imagery, like the so-called Pashupati figure and that legendary one-horned unicorn. Now listen closely, because here is a major exam trap. The Harappans did not have a horse-centric society. While there are a few contested skeletal fragments floating around, the overwhelming historical consensus is that the horse was not a significant part of their culture or their military. But then, by 1900 BCE, this incredible urban miracle just starts falling apart. The great cities are abandoned, the writing entirely disappears, and the expansive trade networks collapse. It leaves us asking the ultimate historical mystery. How did such a brilliantly advanced civilization mysteriously vanish? Let's look at the two main theories impartially, exactly as the sources lay them out. For decades, the dominant theory was an Aryan invasion. This was based partly on a group of unburied skeletons found in Mohenjo-Daro. However, modern scientific consensus, using advanced genetics and a much closer archaeological review, heavily disputes this. Those skeletons actually show healed wounds, not evidence of a sudden grand battle. The prevailing consensus today points squarely to environmental shifts. Mathematical modeling and geological data suggest a severe drying of the Ghaggar-Hakra river systems, deeply decreased monsoon rainfall, and massive tectonic earthquakes. These compounding disasters likely disrupted their agricultural base, quite literally, starving the cities of their lifeblood. But please don't write this off as a total apocalypse. The legacy of the Indus Valley wasn't completely lost, and the civilization didn't just evaporate into thin air. Facing extreme climate pressures, the surviving populations did what humans do. They adapted. They simply migrated eastward and southward into smaller, rural Chalcolithic settlements. They carried their advanced agricultural knowledge right along with them, eventually seeding the subsequent cultures of the Gangetic Plains that would give rise to the next great Indian empires. Which brings us to the end of today's explainer, and I want to leave you with a thought to chew on. The Harappans had the best drainage, the best city planning, and a thriving international economy, yet they were entirely undone by shifting climates and drying rivers. If the environment could erase the ancient world's absolute greatest urban planners, what test is modern society failing to prepare for today? Think about that as you review your notes tonight.
Good luck on the exam, class, and keep questioning the past.